Hello, and a quiet welcome back to the Dusty Codex. Today, our story takes us to the stormy, windswept waters of the Irish Sea, a place we think of as a border, but which was once the heart of a forgotten empire. We are always curious to know where our stories are travelling to, and where your corner of the world is. Please, take a moment to let us know in the comments where you are watching from today. For over 200 years, a powerful, sophisticated, and unique Norse-Gaelic kingdom existed in the Irish Sea, centred on the Isle of Man. It wasn't Viking, as we know it, and it wasn't Scottish, Irish, or English. It was a hybrid, a fusion culture born of war and trade, known as the Kingdom of Mann and the Isles. This kingdom's rulers, the Sea Kings, controlled the trade routes and islands connecting England, Scotland, Ireland, and Norway. Their power didn't come from land, it came from their ships. They ruled from their fleets, creating a powerful, wealthy, and fiercely independent maritime empire of the sea that has been almost completely forgotten by history. This is the story of that lost kingdom, its warrior kings, and the unique hybrid culture they built. Our story begins in the aftermath of the Great Viking Age. By the early 11th century, the era of pure Viking conquest was ending. The Battle of Clontarf in 1014 had broken the back of Norse power in Dublin, but the Vikings didn't just disappear. They had been in the region for 200 years. They had settled, intermarried, and traded. They had become Norse-Gaels, a new, hybrid people. The Irish Sea, which they had once terrorized as a Viking lake, now became their superhighway, a basin of trade and cultural exchange that they, and they alone, truly mastered. Into this power vacuum stepped one of the most remarkable figures of the age, Godred Crovan. Godred was a Norse-Gaelic adventurer, possibly the son of the King of Dublin. He was a survivor of the famous Battle of Stamford Bridge in England in 1066, where the last great Viking army was destroyed. Fleeing that defeat, Godred returned to the Isles with a burning ambition. He gathered a fleet and, after several failed attempts, finally conquered the Isle of Man in 1079 at the Battle of Sky Hill. From this central, strategic island, he would forge an empire. Godred Crovan's new kingdom was a maritime superpower. It consisted of two parts, Man, the Isle of Man, and the Isles, specifically the Sudreys, or Southern Isles, which included the entire chain of the Hebrides, from Islay and Jura up to Lewis and Harris. This kingdom had no real land borders. Its borders were the coastlines. Its highways were the sea lanes. Its capital was not a city, but its fleet. From their central fortress on the Isle of Man, the Sea Kings could strike anywhere, control trade, and demand tribute. The key to their power was their ship, the Berlin or West Highland galley. This was a direct descendant of the Viking longship, but adapted for the rougher Atlantic waters. It was a Clinker-built oar and sail-powered vessel that could carry warriors for raids or cargo for trade. This fleet allowed the Kings of Man to project power with astonishing speed. They could raid the coast of Ireland in the morning, disappear, and be demanding tribute from a Scottish chieftain by evening. They were the undisputed masters of the Irish Sea. This kingdom was not just a political entity, it was a true cultural melting pot. The Manx crosses, intricate stone monuments found on the Isle of Man, tell the whole story. They show Christian crosses intertwined with scenes from Norse mythology, carved with Gaelic knotwork. This fusion was everywhere. The rulers had Norse names like Godred, Olaf, or Magnus, but they spoke Gaelic as well as Old Norse. They formed political marriages with Irish princesses and Scottish noblewomen. The language spoken on the street was a blend, which would eventually evolve into modern Manx Gaelic. Their political system was also a hybrid. They adopted the Old Norse tradition of the Thing, an open-air public assembly. On the Isle of Man, this became Tynwald, which still meets today and is arguably the world's oldest continuous parliament. Here, The king would meet his chieftains, both Norse and Gael, to proclaim laws and settle disputes. Godred Crovan, known in Gaelic legend as King Orry, was a powerful and ruthless king. Not content with Man and the Isles, he conquered Dublin, the richest trading port in the region, and held it for many years. He ruled his sea kingdom with an iron fist until his death in 1095. His death, however, plunged the kingdom into chaos. His sons were too young to rule, and the kingdom was briefly seized by a Norwegian prince, Magnus Barelegs, who reasserted Norway's claim over the Isles. This highlighted the kingdom's central weakness. It was caught between three great powers, Scotland, Norway, and England. Godred's dynasty was eventually restored under his son, Olaf the Red, who managed to stabilize the kingdom. Olaf was a diplomat, not a warrior. He skillfully balanced the ambitions of the surrounding powers, marrying a daughter of an Irish high king and maintaining peace for nearly 40 years. This kingdom, ruled from the deck of a ship, challenges our whole idea of an empire. We think of empires as land, as roads, as great stone cities, but the Norse Gaels built their empire on water. The Irish Sea was their Via Appia, their Silk Road. It's a reminder that history is full of hidden connections, of cultures and powers that existed in the spaces between the great nations we remember. If these stories, these forgotten kingdoms, and the hybrid cultures they created are what you seek, I invite you to subscribe to the Dusty Codex. Your support allows us to continue sailing these lost sea roads of the past. The peace of Olaf's reign was shattered by the rise of the other great figure of this story, Somerleld. Somerleld was a Norse-Gaelic lord from Argyll in western Scotland. He represented a new, resurgent Gaelic power, and he saw the kings of Mann as foreign overlords. Somerled married the granddaughter of Godred Crovan, a strategic move that gave him a claim to the throne. In 1156, he led a massive revolt. His fleet met the Manx fleet in a bloody, indecisive sea battle known as the Battle of the Epiphany. The result was a schism. The Kingdom of Mann and the Isles was torn in two. The King of Mann, Godred II, kept the Isle of Man and the Northern Hebrides. Somerled carved out his own kingdom in the Southern Isles, centred on Argyll. This new state would become the Lordship of the Isles, and Somerled himself would become the ancestor of the powerful Scottish clan MacDonald. Despite this civil war, the Kingdom of Mann endured. Its heart remained the Isle of Man, and its capital was the fortress at Peel Castle. This was the king's stronghold, a symbol of his power and a safe harbour for his fleet. Life for ordinary people on the Isle of Man was a unique blend of cultures. They were farmers, fishermen, and traders. They paid taxes to the Sea King, who in turn was supposed to protect them from raids. The kingdom was wealthy enough to mint its own silver coins, a clear sign of its economic independence and its central role in the trade of the Irish Sea. This Hiberno-Norse currency was used in Dublin, the Hebrides, and beyond. The culture was rich with oral history. Sagas of Norse gods and tales of Gaelic heroes were told in the same halls. This was the world that would later produce the Icelandic sagas, many of which were written down after their authors had visited these Norse-Gaelic courts. The end of the kingdom was not a single event, but a slow strangulation. By the 13th century, a newly powerful kingdom of Scotland, under King Alexander III, was determined to absorb the Isles. At the same time, Norway, under King Haakon IV, sought to re-establish its dominance. In 1263, King Haakon of Norway sailed a massive fleet to Scotland to put down the Scots, but his fleet was caught in a terrible storm at the Battle of Largs. The battle itself was a minor skirmish on a beach, but the storm was decisive. Haakon's fleet was crippled, and he died in Orkney on his way home. This disaster spelled the end for the Kingdom of Mann. Its Norwegian protector was gone. The last Norse-Gaelic king of Mann, Magnus III, was now at the mercy of the Scots. In 1266, the Treaty of Perth was signed. Norway, its sea power broken, formally ceded the Isle of Man and the Hebrides to Scotland. The Kingdom of Man and the Isles, after more than 200 years of proud, hybrid independence, was officially over. The kingdom was absorbed by Scotland. Its unique identity began to fade, and its history was rewritten by its conquerors, leaving it as a mere footnote in the story of Vikings and Scots. But its legacy did not die. In Scotland, the descendants of Somerled became the Lords of the Isles, creating a new Gaelic sea kingdom that continued to defy the Scottish crown for another 200 years, a direct echo of the old Manx kingdom. And on the Isle of Man, the legacy is unmistakable. The Tynwald, that ancient Norse-Gaelic assembly, still meets every year. The Manx language, a unique branch of Gaelic, survives, and the island itself remains a crown dependency, not part of the UK, a proud, stubborn echo of its unique, independent past. The Kingdom of Man and the Isles is a powerful reminder that history is not a neat story of nations, but a messy, swirling, and creative fusion of peoples. For over 2 centuries, these sea kings, not quite Viking, not quite Gael, built an empire not of land, but of water, a forgotten kingdom that once mastered the northern seas.